Hello, this is Ben Langston and Reed Bolander. And this week we are doing a presentation on associative arrays. I'm going to go through a little terminology and then Reed is going to go through some live examples. So an associative array has some different types. There is an associative array of scalar data types, numerically indexed, key or string indexed, and composite data types. Associative arrays are a type of collection. They're single-dimensional structures. There's a couple other types of collections. They're nested tables and V-arrays. And these are talked about in the chapter 2, but we're not covering those. Associative arrays are an unbounded type of collection, meaning there's not a limit on the number of elements it can hold, so you can make them very big. Associative arrays are non-persistent, meaning the array and the data cannot be stored in the database. You can only use these in a PL/SQL block. Associative arrays are sparsely populated, meaning numbering doesn't have to be sequential, but it does have to be unique. Since an associative array is non-persistent, it cannot be used or stored within the database. The numbering for an associative array is explicit, meaning the user has to specify the index number while populating the collection. So up here at the top is a little example. So type array example is table of data type example indexed by index data type. So type, as we know, marks the beginning of the statement. The array example is a user-defined name for the associative array, so you can call that whatever you want. Is table of, this is what type of elements the array is going to hold and to be used by the compiler. Data type example, really that's the data type of the elements the array is going to hold. So it can be a date, a blob, a clob, a Boolean, a number, varchar2, or user-defined type. And I think Reed's going to do examples. What I've seen the most of is really number, varchar2, and user-defined. Haven't seen too many examples of the other ones. Index by is really just specifying the data type of array subscript, and then the index data type is the data type of the array's subscript elements, and that can be a numerical value or a string index value. So Reed's going to show you what some of this looks like with some live examples, and Reed's up next. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. This is Reed. I'm going to now walk you through a couple of examples a few examples with associative arrays. This first one is a simple integer index associative array. And here we just have some code for the output to the console. Then we're first going to declare our user-defined type. So the type is going to be named size table. It is a table of varchar2 3 characters, and it is indexed by a binary integer. And we're going to declare a local variable array of that user-defined type, size table. Here in the begin clause, I assign some data to that array, and then because this is an integer indexed array, we can just use a for loop to go through it. So for I in 1 to the length of the array, we're going to loop through that, and here we're just going to output the data. So let me just show you how this works. I'm going to copy the file name to the clipboard and just run over here to my session and run that. So it just loops through, and it gives us exactly what we wanted it to. Pretty simple example of an indexed, an integer index associative array. One kind of more going one step up in complexity a little bit, we can do a varchar indexed array. So in this case, we essentially, this is what I think of more as an associative array, if you've ever used Perl or something like that, where you're identifying something by a name. This is where you have a key value pair, but it's a named key instead of just a numeric key. And so in this case, we've got, well, this first of all is kind of a bookmark placeholder. We're just going to use that to store the current element name that we are on, or the index value of the the element that we're on later in this while loop. We're defining a user-defined type of temple table that is a varchar 30. It's indexed by a 5-character varchar. And then here we define or declare a local variable array of the temple table type. Then here in the begin clause, I assign values, and notice here, instead of on the other example of the numeric integer, we assign values based, or we assign elements to the array based on a numeric position. Here we're actually defining a key essentially. So I go through and assign some values to it, and so here's the index value, and here's the actual stored value of the different elements. Then to loop through it, we've got this while loop. So first we take the first element, which alphabetically would be Arizona, and we assign that to the current variable that was defined up here as kind of the placeholder or bookmark. We loop through everything, give some output. One important thing to remember is with this one, we have to advance to the next record in the array. It's not like a for loop where every iteration through the for loop, the variable increases. Here we have to kind of manage that ourselves. So let me just show you how this works. I'll copy the file name again and execute that. So now we have the values that were in that array. To take it one step up in complexity, and I think this is a pretty awesome capability. We can now have indexed. We could do integer index, but in this case, I've got a varchar indexed associative array. But instead of just storing a varchar value like I did here, the temple, the city names, I've got an object. So first I need to define that object, and it consists of 2 varchar values. One is model name and the other is year range. I have those defined here as a user-defined type. Again, I need that bookmark or placeholder variable. Here I have a user-defined type of table model object. That's the object that was created up here, and it's indexed by a varchar. And then I define or declare a local variable array of that same type. And then in the begin clause, I assign values. So here are my values, or the key values. Now notice here, this is a little bit different. Because I'm storing multiple things in this element, I have to typecast essentially what's being stored, and I'm typecasting it as a model object with my 2 varchars. So now when I refer to the LV array yj key, it will return to me an object of the type model object with these values in it. So then again, my while loop, I loop through everything. And the way that you refer to the individual elements within each record in the array is using dot notation. So my LV array current is just like the last example, but because I have multiple fields essentially stored in that, or multiple attributes stored in each element, I have to refer to them by field name. So I've got model name and year range, which were the field names that were defined up here in this user-defined type. So this, the logic here is very similar to the last example. So let me just show you how this works. I'll copy the file name and execute that. And here we've got, the output there. Associative arrays, very powerful, and I've never used them within a database before. I think it's a pretty neat feature. Hope you've enjoyed this, and I hope you've learned something. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.